Chapter 4, The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkinson. Today is March 2nd, 2017. Read by Jeffrey W. Jansen. Jansen. Talk the text. Going live now. Hey everybody, today is Thursday, March 2nd, 2017. This is Chapter 4 of The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkinson. The last book we just got done reading the chapter of was The Prayer of Jabez. This is The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkinson. We are on Chapter 4. Ordinary enters the wasteland. Remember, he just got done. He was going to go across the bridge. However, the landlord of Familiar would not let him cross. So he was going to go ahead and swim across. He had the bullies. He encountered the bullies. And one of his friends actually sent him a boat so they can get across. He was asleep in the high grass on the other side, so he did make it to the other side. Chapter 4, The Ordinary Enters the Wasteland. Ordinary slept deeply and woke humming his unfamiliar tune. The fears of leaving his comfort zone were gone now. His border bullies were behind him. His step was light as he traveled into the unknown. Around each new bend, he expected to reach the land of promise where he would find his big dream. But he didn't find it. Instead, he soon found himself at the edge of a wide chasm. A haze obscured the view below. When he reached the bottom, he saw what lay ahead, and what he saw made his heart sink. He saw miles and miles of nothing but sand, rocks, and a few scraggly trees. He was standing on the edge of an empty wasteland. How could any wonderful dream live here, he thought. He wasn't sure, but the path continued on, curving away into the dreary distance. So he decided to go on. Ordinary walked, and every time he got hungry, he opened his suitcase and ate. And every time he got thirsty, he opened it and drank. And every time he thought about his dream, he decided to keep going. Time passed. Ordinary's skin burned. His feet blistered. His bones ached. One day blurred into another, and then one day he got hungry and opened his case and didn't find anything to eat. That was the day Ordinary began to worry. He called out to the dream giver for food, but he got no answer. 2 days later, he ran out of water. He called out to the dream giver again and heard nothing. Fortunately, that was all today Ordinary managed to find a trickle of water coming from a rock. At least now he was only starving. But if he was smart enough to find water, maybe he could find food too. Sure enough, it wasn't too long before he spotted a strange bush with some strange dessert fruit hanging from its branches. Ordinary tried one. It didn't taste sweet, but it didn't taste sour either, so he ate his fill. Still, the dream giver was nowhere in sight. More time passed, the longest hours and days Ordinary could ever remember passed. Desperately began to look for a way out. One day he followed what looked like a shortcut over a ridge, but it led to a canyon that ended in quicksand. He tried traveling at night when it was cooler, but he kept losing the trail. Every delay made him more determined to find a quicker route, but every attempt only led to another dead end. Again and again, Ordinary lost his way. Again and again, he cried out for the dream giver to show him the way, but no answer came. Why had he even trusted the dream giver to guide him in this first place? The day came when Ordinary finally gave up. He sat on his suitcase and refused to move until the dream giver showed up with a plan. But the dream giver didn't show up that day or the next. Ordinary had never felt so lost and alone. He became angry. He got angrier and angrier, and then a hard, hot wind began to blow. The wind blew all that day and all the next. Sand blew into Ordinary's eyes. It blew into his teeth and ears. When the wind finally stopped, Ordinary stood to his feet, but as far as he could see, there was only sand. The path to his dream had disappeared completely. Obviously, his entire trip through the wasteland had been a waste. Hot tears coursed down his dirty cheeks. You're not a dream giver, he shouted to the sky. You're a dream taker. I trusted you. You promised to be with me and help me, and you didn't. Then Ordinary stumbled in despair across the sandy waste, dragging his empty suitcase behind him. His dream was dead, and now he wanted to die too. When he came to a scraggly tree, he lay down in its scraggly patch of shade and closed his eyes. That night he slept the sleep of dreamless dreamer. The next morning, Ordinary heard something. Startled, he peered up to a shimmering somebody sitting in the branches of the tree. "Who are you?" he asked, as she climbed down the ground. "My name is Faith," she said. "The dream giver sent me to help you." "But it's too late," cried Ordinary. "My dream is dead. When I needed the dream giver the most, he was nowhere in sight." "What do you need that you haven't received?" asked Faith. "Well, if it weren't for the few springs of water I found," answered Ordinary, "I'd be dead of thirst by now." "Yes, and?" she asked. "If it weren't for that fruit I found, I'd be walking skeleton," he cried. "Wait, I am a walking skeleton. I could die of starvation any minute." "Oh my," Faith murmured. "And?" "Well," huffed Ordinary, "a little guidance would have been nice. Ever since I came here, it's been one delay after another. I've been wandering in circles since I don't know when. What a waste!" "I see," said Faith, nodding. "So what will you do now?" "Just tell me how to get back to familiar," he said. "I'm sorry," she said, "but I can't help you with that." "That figures," said Ordinary. "The dream giver sends me a helper who can't even help." "You might be right," said Faith, "but that's for you to decide." Then Faith walked away in a direction Ordinary felt sure was wrong. It wasn't long before Ordinary began to have second thoughts. What if he was wrong? He wished he hadn't been so rude to the somebody named Faith, and he began to miss her. He realized that while they were talking, he had felt hope for the first time in his very long time. Ordinary jumped to his feet and scanned the horizon. "Faith!" he cried, but she was nowhere in sight. "Faith!" he cried again, but there was no reply. Then Ordinary had an idea. He climbed a scraggly tree to the top. From there he could see Faith in the distance. As quickly as he could, he climbed down and set off in the same direction. Later that same day, Ordinary was eating some fruit, besides a trickle of water, when he saw his journey through the wasteland in a whole new way. Food enough for a day, water when he needed to drink, a path to follow that led to Faith. How could he have been so blind? Even when the dream giver had been nowhere in sight, he had always been near. That was the day, too, that Ordinary looked at his empty suitcase and decided it was time to leave it behind. He made a makeshift knapsack, took his dream journal and feather and ink, and walked on. After that, whenever Ordinary came to a scraggly tree, he climbed it to look for Faith, and when he had her in sight, he marked the direction and started walking again. One day, Ordinary met some dreamers returning to familiar. They told him a sad story. They had crossed the wasteland and nearly reached the land of promise, but then they encountered giants so large and overwhelming that the dreamers felt as small as grasshoppers, and the dream giver had been nowhere in sight. The nobody sounded convincing, and he recognized their wariness, but as they continued talking, he saw something more. They had stopped trusting the dream giver, and now they were traveling the opposite direction from Faith. When the nobody strongly warned him that what lay ahead was too hard, he saw something else. He had changed. His trip through the wasteland had not been a waste. Now he is prepared for what lay ahead, no matter how hard. "Travel safely," he told the returning nobodies, "but I'll be going on." As Ordinary pressed on through the desert, his dream beat brightly in his chest again, and the more the sun blazed, the more Ordinary believed that he could find the land of promise, no matter how long it took, if only he took the way of Faith. One morning on the far side of the desert, Ordinary wrote down the truth about the wasteland. After crossing the waters, I thought my dream was just around the corner. Instead, I found a wasteland. I was disappointed by the delay, and my doubts about the dream giver only made things worse. Now I see the wasteland and was not a waste. It has taught me to trust the dream giver even when he's nowhere in sight. I think I am stronger now. I'm following faith, and every day I feel more prepared for whatever is ahead. Chapter 5 we'll be reading tomorrow. Alright, everybody. That was Chapter 4, The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkinson. Understand this, y'all matter. Y'all mean the world. And even though you don't hear him, the dream giver's talking. It's just up to you to make a decision. Remember, you have the freedom to make whatever decision you want to make. It's up to you to decide if you're being guided or not. My name's Jeffrey Jansen. We'll read chapter 5 tomorrow, or 4 tomorrow, and then 5 in the other one. Anyway, appreciate you guys. Have a great day, everybody. God bless. Bye.